Cool, Gina. We are live. Just answering your question there. Okay, thanks everybody for joining us today for the Women in Music and SyncTank from Pitch to Placement, the Essentials of Sync Licensing webinar. This is a part of our Sync Stories webinar series that we also publish as a podcast, always available at sync.blog.com. We're particularly proud of that because we just rolled out a new design for it. That's kind of where we do all of our blogging and bringing guests bloggers in to kind of create a community and kind of grow this thing that we do in sync licensing from both the demand, being the licensees and the publishing side, being the supply side, and just try to connect everybody and bring new people into this world because we love it and it's done us very well. So today I'm just going to be kind of running through a slide deck that the editor of our blog and chief marketer at SyncTank, Emma Griffiths, built with us. So basically what we'll do is kind of go over some of the high level points of some of the basics of sync. Between each slide, I'm just going to take some time to answer some questions. So please feel free to drop the questions into, like I said, the questions applet there, and we'll get going. So first off, again, a really, really big thank you to Women in Music. They're just an amazing organization, that has, of course, always advanced the cause of women in the industry and fought for equality, but also for everybody. They also throw really great parties. So if you ever get invited to one of those, I highly recommend them. Their Christmas party is always my favorite. Just some information that we have on the screen here. They are international. They have offices, of course, in all the major markets here. There's a members forum, which is really great for connecting with like-minded people and networking. A lot of the webinars and seminars and things that do across the world are also really high value. Really can't say enough about how amazing they are. So, you can please join, please get involved, and follow them on their socials. And yeah, it's just a great thing to be a part of. We are SyncTank. SyncTank is a platform that we built out of the need for our own publishing company to have a way to this was 10 years ago, have a way to kind of digitize the actual business that we were doing. We saw every other element of the music industry kind of going online through iTunes and other DSPs. It was right in the middle of that whole blog craze where, music media became digitized and pretty much exclusively started to happen on the web, social media as well. And, we noticed that we were still pushing paper. We were still trying to, find the right agreements and handle all the metadata and 3 different databases for things. And finally we said, this is enough. So we built SyncTank, and we ended up being better at software than I think we were music publishing. So we shifted, and this is what we do. So SyncTank is, we consider the leading all-in-one platform for music publishers, creative agencies. Our clients range from very large studios and broadcasters to some small, really cool labels. Pretty much runs the whole gamut. We also offer an individual software, which I might speak to a little bit later, called Sound Gizmo, which is just a simpler, less expensive version of SyncTank. It does offer all the core features, but more geared towards the individual composer or copyright holder, or even the individual independent music supervisor, primarily as a way to house all your metadata, share all your tracks, and kind of be engaged in the sync and pitch process. So enough of my selling. Quite proud of SyncTank, so I like to talk about it. So sync licensing. The basics of sync licensing are very easy. It's, as you guys know, applying the use of a copyright, an audio copyright, to another type of media, usually video or visual media. And within that comes, of course, a royalty fee for the use of it, as far as actual individual performance royalties, but more importantly, that we're going to be speaking about today, the licensing of the actual copyright itself. So as you can read on the screen, a synchronization or a sync is basically the result of combining rights holders' music with a moving image across many different platforms. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth, but the key players here, or the key mediums, are going to be advertising. So that includes, your broadcast advertising, your web advertising. It's going to include films, which are really usually high level syncs, and everybody likes them. TV shows, which are great for exposure, along with licensing. Getting the licensing fees and making a bit of money off of those. It pushes your music to sets in all over the country. There's also a lot of kind of secondary opportunities for sync licensing that people don't often think about, because it's not something that's really kind of publicly consumable. Those things would be corporate videos for big corporate offsites and events like that. Other business elements, uses for sales videos and different assets like that, where a product might need a little bit of audio accompaniment to kind of deliver the voice and the message of the product to who will hopefully be a customer. The two key elements when you talk about sync licensing, the two actual assets that are licensed, are the master recording, which is literally that. It's the recording of the copyright, and the publishing right, which can be seen as kind of an extension of the sheet music. Before the recording industry existed, you used to go to a music store, buy the sheet music, bring it home and play it. And so that the IP lives within that copyright, lives within that sheet music. So in order to participate in a license, you must at least have admin control or some ownership of either or both assets, both the master recording and the publishing, which again, we can talk about being the actual sheet music. Oftentimes these are shared by many people, especially with, the track and hook kind of writing style that a lot of pop music especially has kind of adopted over the past few years. The rights to both of these assets can be controlled, by various different entities, various different people. The publishing rights can have many different writers on them, so it does get a little convoluted on that level. But understanding the basics of it can help you navigate that if you do get into that situation. Like, I don't know, maybe you're a rapper and you had some bars on somebody else's track, and now that's getting licensed. You're entitled to performance rights for that, and if you have a writing credit, you're entitled to also some participation in the exploitation of the publishing. That's just one example. We won't talk about performance royalties too much. It's kind of the last sentence there on this slide. The performance royalties are just simply every time a song is played in the public domain or in public, the performers, not just the writers, will earn some aspect of a performance royalty. They're usually pretty small. I know everybody's probably following a lot of, there's a lot of talk about kind of how the performance rights and streaming rights and things like that are kind of slighted, kind of more towards the heavy hitters in the industry. If you're a writer, it's just important to find the PRO in your territory that fits best. That's a performance rights organization. So your ASCAPs, your BMI, SOCAN, so on and so forth. Get with someone you feel comfortable with, and they can lead the charge on that. So in order to get, assuming that we're here speaking from kind of the supply side of the equation, and we are copyright holders that have some amount of catalog that we want to try to exploit for sync licensing. The most important thing that you can do is prepare your catalog for sync. You need to really kind of adopt strict metadata guidelines, have a best practice for recording types of metadata, so that there's cohesion across the data within your copyrights, and that would actually, most of that resides these days kind of in the ID3 tag. So if you were to go, I'm going to pop off of this for a minute. Pardon me, guys. Just want to open up my iTunes here, slide it over to this window that you guys are looking at, which is proving kind of difficult. Oh, there we go. So just a real quick thing about metadata. I'm actually going to shoot out. I did a talk at NYU, I think a year or two ago, and I did a separate metadata deck. And that deck is actually contains a lot of best practices. So I'm gonna share that with you guys in one of the handouts in just a minute. But just to kind of give an idea as I push past this, when I talk about metadata, there are lots of different types of metadata. SyncTank itself, we track about 80 different types, including territorial rights, writers, percentages, ownership information, audio metadata, to make it searchable within our system, things like that. Without a system like SyncTank or similar, some of the other ones that are available on the market, the key metadata that you're going to be looking to straighten up is going to be in iTunes. When you click Command or Control I, you'll get a window that popped up on the wrong screen, in which you'll see literally the metadata that lives within the header of the MP3 track. So it's always usually, this is a quick note, it's always usually a good idea to share MP3s just because they do have that metadata and they're a little bit easier to pass around. WAV files and other lossless files do not have a header in which they can store metadata, like an MP3 does. The MP3 that you're seeing right now for this Charlie Black song has a piece of song metadata, the artist, the album artist. That can be if there's a featured, and people use that in different ways. Composers are listed there. That's great if people are looking for, maybe one of the writers wrote on this, isn't named within the artist or the album artist. If you have the composers there, they'll be searchable in your iTunes and other places. This metadata goes everywhere that the track goes. So if you send this to a music supervisor, this is what they're going to be seeing. So it's incredibly important, if it is your copyright, to make sure that you leave some contact information within the comments of the MP3. So I might say, for licensing ops, contact Mike. So now, let's say that we pitched this to for a project and it wasn't used, it wasn't the right fit, they found something better. What they might do next is, 6 months, a year down the road, maybe find this track in their iTunes and be like, oh, this is perfect for this current project. Unless you have this information in the header, they're probably not going to know where they got that song from. So I think it's a really big thing that you guys, if you could do that, try to leave comments. If you do it on a one-to-one basis as you're pitching, that's fine. If we with SyncTank and SoundGizmo, you can edit it all in bulk. But in any case, it's a really good idea to have that data in there. Yep, I'm going to breeze through the rest of the slide, and then I'm just going to answer some of the questions that are coming in. So I'm going to drop this. I urge you to look at it later, not now. But here is the metadata. Give me 1 second. My computer's a little slow. Pardon me, guys. I'm having some weird issues, I think, caused by this GoToWebinar applet. Doesn't seem to want to be revealing any of my other windows. Okay, sorry, guys. All right, so just before I forgot, oh, that's weird. Anyway, I'll get that over to you in a second. I'm just not sure exactly why it's not allowing me to drag it over. Anyway, so moving on. So knowing your rights. This is super important. You need to know what you have the ability to pitch and where there might be snags, or approvals that you need to get from other people that participate in ownership of either the two assets that we spoke about. You definitely want to make sure that if there are other parties involved, that you keep, let me just open this back up here. Pardon me. That you keep those phone numbers close and you keep those relationships growing, so that when you do have an opportunity for a sync, what I've found tends to happen is usually these things need to move pretty quickly. So if you are selected, if a song is selected for inclusion into a project, You need to be able confidently clear that track and deliver it to them and say it's ready to be used in the form they want it to be used, and be ready to sign that contract wholeheartedly. Because a lot of these things tend to happen in post, and post tends to kind of always, the person that's last in line tends to bear the majority of the the deadline responsibility. So yeah, keeping that in mind, just make sure that as you keep your metadata, make sure you keep your metadata correct. Make sure that you keep your rights and partnerships and control also correct. Instrumentals are a great thing as well. A lot of times, someone will like certain parts of the song, maybe not appreciate the vocal, or it's not good for their use. So having instrumental tracks available and ready to go are really great. Also, if you have the right clearances for your tracks, it can be, you can offer bespoke edits as well. So if someone needs something specific, you can offer them to make a specific, cut a couple stems out, add a couple stems, whatever you need to do for their use. It's definitely worth bringing in the sale in most of our opinions. PRO membership we spoke about, so just make sure that you find the right one. Again, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC here in America, SOCAN in Canada, and various other ones around the world. And technology, if you want to use Sound Gizmo, we think it's the best. But definitely, in this age, use technology to your ability to manage the bulky overhead that you have to do, such as managing metadata and things like that. So yeah, I'm going to take a second and answer some of these questions. Oh, Judith, I'm gonna this Judith Masia asks if this presentation will be available. Yeah, we're gonna shoot the deck over, and I'm for what it's worth, I'm recording it as well. So if you want to listen to me talk again, then we'll be able to publish the recorded the recorded version as well. But the deck will be given out along with the other deck that I promised. So Kat Spina asks, how important is it to be associated with a label or management? Does this lead to more opportunities? I think that's kind of situational, in my opinion. Knowing, and I was for a brief time managed a hip hop group out of Chicago who kind of just decided to not be rappers anymore and went on and got real jobs. So I kind of stopped. But in my experience, when they came to me and my team, who included Michael Rosenblatt, who was like A&R guy that signed Madonna back in the day, really cool guy. They were looking for people that kind of had tie-ins into publishing, but more people that had tie-ins into the media and promoting, getting them kind of paid attention to in larger outlets, and then again as well for larger labels. So as far as, specifically looking for sync opportunities through a management or a label, if you do identify some candidates that you think you want to work with as a label or management, ask them those questions. Ask them where their connections lie within the publishing world. Do they have relationships with publishers that might want to pick your music up? Do they do any direct to demand side contacts as far as knowing music supervisors, things like that? The other option, as far as getting some help and building a team for yourself to kind of get more exposure in the hope of getting more sync opportunities, is to maybe look at a sync plugger. If you don't think that you'd rather spend more time on your music, Kat, than pitching, there are sync pluggers that, if you find a right vibe with one of them, they will take your music and include it in any pitch that it's relevant for a percentage. There's lots of companies out there. I don't really work with much of them because our model's a bit different. But I've heard some good stories about that. Hope that answers your question. Sasha, yep, PRO, the performance right organization, just like ASCAP. So Renee asks, if you record a cover, do you need to register the new arrangement? There are particular rules on that. I think, and I'm not a music business lawyer, but I believe that you of course you obviously won't participate in any of the publishing. So if you do, let's say you make a cover and it does get synced, you're passing that money through because you don't own the copyright. So whoever owns that copyright is getting paid for it, or their percentage of it, which will probably be the majority of it, considering that it is technically their intellectual property. So for syncing a cover, you would get paid for the performance rights. You can't register it as a copyright because it isn't your copyright. It's already been a copyright. So yeah, I mean, not really going to be the most monetizable avenue as far as sync goes. Cool. And Peter Weiss asks, what kind of arrangement should you have with a co-writer to have admin control over the master and the publishing so you can pitch without any issues? We would consider this in the industry called an easy clear. So an easy clear is like you worked with a co-writer. It's not necessarily 100% of your 100% your IP, but if you admin it or if you have some sort of arrangement with the co-writer that you don't need prior approval for any sort of pitch, that's definitely something I would work in. A lot of the times it comes down, these things can get a little bit nitpicky, but it's my solid belief that 100% of nothing is nothing, and you co-wrote a song, so co-monetize it, however that agreement works out. Cool. So just moving on, just a couple resources. Again, I'm going to share all this with you guys, so these links will be available to you. Just some, we have a lot of useful being in our space in the industry. We come across all sorts of useful information all the time, and we like to pass it on. You can always find that at SyncTank with an H on everything but Instagram. You guys don't, or Snapchat. You guys don't need to see us, but Twitter. Facebook and the like, we're always kind of finding things that we appreciate and making sure everybody in our community knows about it. Legalities and key terms. So here's the fun stuff. So you're going to come up with, you're going to see terms and briefs and kind of throughout the industry, such as the easy clear, which I just described to Peter. An easy clear would be something like, okay, I don't own all of the rights. It's not a one-stop publishing situation where I own the master 100%. I wrote the song 100%, or I control the writers that wrote the song 100%, and I own the master as well. That we call a one-stop, which people, especially when they're working on timelines, love on the demand side, because we don't need to go through any rigmarole of trying to get this thing cleared. I say I want it. The creative that's pitching it to me says, okay, you have it. He or she has the paperwork to back it up, and that's that. And easy clear is kind of a step down from that. There are other parties involved. They can work like one stops because an easy clear is easy because, like Peter asked, you've already set up those relationships with the other people that are participating in the monetization. So you're ready to roll. You might want to just shoot them a note, say, hey, we're going to do this, but the agreement is that working together to make the copyright. Most favorite nations. That's a clause that people put in that just kind of references blanket licensing prices. We don't see that too much at this level. Things like exclusivity. So there might be exclusivity clauses in which someone wants your track for a commercial, but they're going to put something into the actual contract that says this song can't be used for any other purposes, sync purposes, or licensing purposes for X amount of years because we want exclusivity on it. I think you'll find that with higher end contracts that will happen pretty often. We do have a bunch of resources. I'm not going to run down the whole thing, but when I do show this deck out to you guys, the resources that we've included will kind of give you a full rundown that you can read offline. Our legal guidance is always good. We don't offer it because we don't do that. But there are free resources out there for artists that you can work with. People, lawyers that donate their time, and just don't be afraid to reach out for help. And if you ever have any particular questions, you guys can always email me. I'm Mike@synctank.com. I will try my best to point you in the right direction. Hey, so Judith just asked a question. What paperwork do you need to ask to make sure it's backed up? So when I think before you start, there are some templated contracts. Again, we don't get too far into legal advice just because that's not our bag. But there are some templated contracts. I think the agreement is, or the idea is to just make sure that you're on the same page with everybody. Make sure that if you do have a co-writing agreement, that it expressly, uh, lays out, both any admin costs that can be included, the splits and the compensation. Make sure that all that if that person is attached to a PRO or attached to a publisher, working with the publisher, that information is jotted down. You have all the contact information for those people. Again, just so that you can make sure you move quickly. Judith, if you have any other questions about that stuff, just shoot me an email. I think I can probably help you out with that offline. Again, without giving any legal advice. Cool. So this is the fun part. So we're going to assume that we've gone through. We've got a pretty cohesive catalog together of all of our copyrights. We know what our rights are for exploiting those copyrights. We understand our metadata in a way that it's all clear and concise. We make sure that any file that leaves our domain and gets pitched out has a way contact information included, and everything's kind of as professional as possible. And so now's the fun part. Now it's time to start looking, doing the hunting, finding the people within the projects and within the industries that we would like to approach. That's step one. As far as getting your pitches ready. It's really easy to find this data, more or less. Who's doing what just by watching, watch a show or pay attention to Adweek. Search a commercial. If you like the commercial, you're going to find out who the advertiser is, and you can start to kind of understand who these people are. In our experience, no one likes cold pitches. You're going to have to, I think, initially start to kind of do that. But there's some common courtesy guidelines that we'll kind of speak about as far as cold pitching and getting in front of the music supervisors, the producers, the decision makers for these projects. This slide just lays out kind of some of the basics. Everyone from an actual producer to someone running the music department to even sometimes editors get stuck with needing to get music into a project quickly. So there's all sorts of people in television and elsewhere that can be a part of this. Credits, IMDb is great for finding information about who's working behind the scenes. Variety is awesome. They're always, it's a super nerdy trade rag, and they're always, kind of writing about the movers and shakers behind the scenes. For advertising, we tend to see that there are in-house supervision departments and music departments for advertisers. But usually it's the creatives and the producers that are kind of, doing the pitch. It can be a little harder to get a hold of them. Just like, pretty much everybody in all of these verticals, I think the best way to identify the people for the opportunities is to be at the events, to be networking, to, put a face to the email that they're going to get. And networking is key in every industry, but a lot of music department professionals are just consistently bombarded by every single artist in the world trying to get their music synced. So the more you understand the person that you're pitching to, their projects, and if you can get some face time to say hello or somehow build a rapport outside of just pitching them directly and hoping for the best, you're going to definitely have the best success. And I personally have interviewed music supervisors from all across the industry, and that's what they all say. No one likes a cold call. So yeah, and then, everything else is pretty much follows the same line. Video games are a really big emerging way to monetize your audio assets at this point. Everything from in-game syncs to trailers, which are huge. They crank those out all the time. We have some friends over at Sony PlayStation and they have teams of people building these trailers. So it's really cool. So yeah, there's a useful list at the bottom of that link, at that slide, which I will send you. I'm going to move on, but I'm going to answer. Let's see. Oh, so Judith, I'm going to actually get into this in a second when we talk about kind of. Judith asks, do you just email them, advertising agencies, and ask for their mail out list? From my understanding, it's hard to get to them. Yes, it is very hard to get to them. Usually those emails aren't responded. I mean, what I've always done in all verticals is I just figure out who's who on LinkedIn, pay attention to, what events are going on in the industry, maybe have a smaller budget for event entry and, for the occasional beer to buy someone you want to butter up, and just be the person. Don't be the email. Can't stress that enough, but we'll get into it in a moment. So moving on. So when we talk about channels for sync opportunities, these are the channels in which the media would be utilized, and where the sync would actually be let out to the public, and where the money would be why they're spending the money, I should say. So just really simple stuff. We went over this. The team, television, film, games, ads, online content is huge. If you have some, like, a lot of times we have clients that have smaller. Understanding your catalog is very important. I have some clients that have some music that is never going to be top line stuff. It's either a beat, didn't make it to an album, or it's a beat, a super B-side, super mellow, not a pop hit. That stuff, when you start looking at your catalog, you can actually start to think, well, this thing, no one's probably going to link this, or license this, or want to sync it for a while. So maybe I can make it inexpensively available for content creators on the web, such as YouTube content creators, people making mobile apps and things like that. A big part about your catalog is kind of understanding the value of your catalog, which when we started, it was like an impossibility. I didn't know what any of this stuff was worth, especially if no one's ever validated that it was worth anything. Along with having your metadata straight and in line, kind of understanding the value of your catalog and where it fits in compared to others like it is super, super important. Because of course you want to get the most money out of everything, but you want to make sure that you're getting the right opportunities that fit your catalog. We have some articles on stuff like that, and I'm always happy to help people if they have any questions, particularly. So Rose asks, Rose. So I have this whole thing recorded. We're gonna give this deck out. She asked if there was going to be a recording because she came late. So the whole thing will be recorded. It'll be on syncblog.com. I'm going to send this deck out as well as some other stuff. Cool. So just a quick look at some of the key personnel. This is just going to be more of a reference slide for you guys when I hand this thing over to you. Just the types of people that would be involved in the music process. Every company is different. Every project's different. There isn't really a one answer, but this will give you some of the ideas of some of the titles you might search in LinkedIn if you're doing some snooping. Cool. So now that we spoke about the channels, the companies and that make the content, type of companies, the channels in which they distribute it, and the key personnel, we'll move on to the second slide of identifying the sync opportunities. Research is everything. Knowing what you're getting into is going to make you seem, it's just people want to do business with people that sound like they know what's up. So understanding, if you find out, let's say you think that, you're following the work of a music supervisor, and you're kind of a fan of her, and you think that you would love to send her some stuff. Do some research on her, learn what projects she's worked on, listen to that music, get an idea for what she likes, and you'll have a better idea of what to pitch. That combined with a little bit more of a personal touch, such as getting out there and networking, will definitely help you to seem more informed and more naturally and intrinsically a part of their project before you even are. And I personally, I would personally rather work with someone that's easier to work with and maybe, not as technically skilled, for example, on my side of things. And I think that a lot of professionals are the same way. You want to be able to work with someone as easily as possible. So there are tons of resources for figuring this out. What I found is the more that you dive into the community, the more things kind of just become apparent, and you start to kind of learn about the landscape of professionals, learn about the landscape of companies, just in holistic reading of articles and following Twitter feeds. Not to be too silly, but just like ours. That's at SyncTank with an H. We do also on that blog on syncblog.com. We distribute some information about events that are worthwhile for attending, for networking, and for getting kind of more involved in the community. And we will definitely share that with you as well. Uh, yeah, so just keep up with people, try to be involved in LinkedIn. Just normal business practices, normal networking practices, I should say. And then our big and bold: never pitch for a sync opportunity without doing your research first. Just probably wasting everybody's time. Again, these guys get these music. The demand side of this business gets just onslaughts, just so many emails consistently for people that are most of the time pitching garbage. Not that the music's garbage, just that they didn't do the research. It's completely wrong for the project. It's something that you can, literally, like, we interviewed some people from Vice, and she outlined it very clear. She's like, "We're Vice. We want independent music. We want to break the band. We want stuff that fits our aesthetic." So, someone that's pitching outside of that aesthetic is wasting everybody's time. No one's gonna listen to it. So yeah, you can usually glean a lot from the actual company and their branding and what they're putting forward, and the personal branding of the creative or professional themselves. Cool. So I'm going to answer a couple questions. Athena asks, "Hi, how do we listen to other people's catalogs? Would we just listen to whatever music they have publicly available, or are there artists who are really successful at pitching with catalogs we can find easily?" So when you're listening to catalogs to kind of gauge, I recommend listening to other people's catalogs just to kind of understand the competition, to understand what people are what people are producing within your space. So obviously, every SoundCloud is obviously a really easy way to find people's catalogs. If you're talking about top line pop music, rock music, stuff like that, anything that's been commercially released through DSP like iTunes, paying attention to the trade rags, and listening for syncs. If you see a commercial in a song that sounds like yours, do the research on the commercial, figure out who made it. That might be their vibe right now. I've noticed personally, and I can't speak to this being exactly the case, but you end up with one Subaru commercial with a jangly indie folk song on it that gives you that like warm kind of feeling, and then before you know it, there's a Toyota commercial with a very similar kind of vibe in the song, and so on and so forth. Usually when it starts happening, it's a bit too late to jump on it, but you can kind of predict trends by paying attention. I do it for fun. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. The other thing is that you can go to places like there are different companies. We sell a software platform or rent a software platform to people that then use it to pitch themselves. There are companies such as MusicBed, who everybody's a big fan of, that will actually take the music into their catalog and then admin it and pitch it out. So going to a site like that to listen to catalogs that are available for sync and looking at the prices there as a user, as if you were going to purchase something, might be a good way to get involved and start to listen to what people are putting out. So yeah, Lauren Bowman asks, "Do companies always look for master recordings that were recorded in a studio, or is it okay to send home recordings that sound okay?" I think that's pretty situational. Usually if you're going to want to have it mastered, just because they're not going to want to master the track, but because you wouldn't want them to master your track anyway, because it is your master and you want to make it sound good. I think it's definitely, if you can, they have a couple of quick mastering services that are available online. Just make sure everything's mastered. Make sure that your levels are consistent, and play it in as many different stereo systems as you can to make sure it sounds right. But I personally, I did a record with Toro Imoa a long time ago, and before he was like on Car Park and stuff, and we literally took his bedroom recording. It was perfect. We just had it mastered, and it was perfect. So yeah, I guess in sometimes that could be the case. They are going to require a lossless file as high quality as possible, so you do need to make sure that you're sticking to file guidelines, and you're providing them. If you do get to pitch MP3s, of course, that's fine. always put your best foot forward, but when it comes to actually delivering a file for sync, they will have guidelines. So you just want to kind of make sure that your waves are, follow the metadata guidelines for the for the file naming convention. Make sure that they're at the proper bit rates, so on and so forth. Okay. So Anyola, I hope I'm saying that right. Asks, this is great so far. Thank you for that. Any advice for people wanting to start working in sync and licensing? Yeah, there our clients are always looking for interns, and really, I think the best way to do that, if you have the ability to, is to engage, find people that you like their catalog, and engage with them. See if you can't get involved via an internship. Or some other method. That's a great way to kind of get your foot in the door. And again, we're going to send out a list of different events. If you want to get involved, I would definitely say get to those networking events and meet as many people as possible. And Kat asks another question. She says, knowing how high the volume of submissions are, do you have any suggestions about how to manage your time effectively and focus your search? I.e., if you're looking for a sync, you should be spending X amount of hours a week pitching X amount of networking. I think that's kind of like a personal recipe. I think that more importantly, refining your process of pitching and refining your process of researching, and sticking to kind of guidelines. I do this thing, which I like read on some like flip book article or something like that. I give myself a minimum of 10 minutes to do something and a maximum of an hour. So if I'm not into it within 10 minutes, I just stop and I do something that I'm more interested in. If I'm at hour one and there hasn't been enough progress, and I see more stuff coming up in my schedule, I'll put it down for them. I'm a little bit of a procrastinator, so that was kind of the way that I learned how to do it. But I would just experiment and figure it out. Kind of see how it goes and keep us updated. Cool. So we're going to talk about promo now. I'm going to go to the next slide. So promo is traditionally, kind of considered something kind of more for the retail space. It grows your if you're an artist that performs live and that has tracks available for sale or for stream. Promo and marketing is really important to building your brand as an artist. But along with building your brand as an artist, you're also building your brand as a syncable asset. Because the more attention that you garner, the more social reputation that you have on the internet and all that fun stuff, the more you're going to be able to ask for, literally, and the more kind of validated you're going to be in the eyes of a lot of people. So while all that stuff will help you, again, if you're an artist and not a composer or production library owner or something like that. Promoting your music kind of through the traditional channels, your Twitter and SoundCloud and Facebook, and doing shows and all that fun stuff, really can also help your sync licensing. I think the most important thing to really do is to focus on a personal brand for yourself as an artist or as a composer. That can be just making sure that all your digital assets are tight and consistent. Everything looks good. Any opportunity that you have to blog about your experience or speak about your experience and engage with the community that you're trying to kind of be a bigger part of definitely helps to bring that. Being honest with yourself and knowing what your strengths are, what the strength of your music is, what your reach is, what your goals are, what your intentions are for your music, both and personally, can really help to build a trustworthiness to your personal brand and to your music. Again, I find, and I think a lot of people find, that people that they trust and that are easy to work with are going to be the first people they go to, because no one wants extra, a harder time than they need to have it. So in the promo aspect, creating a brand for yourself, your music, through some of those things, I think is very important. Knowing your niche, if you have a niche, so that my music is unique because it does this, right? And the people that listen to my music, the crowd, the audience that I know I have, I can also glean pretty quickly that they like this type of media. So right then you've identified a connection. You know that you have the end user or the end listener. You know that you have an attraction to them. And, everybody puts everything that they like out on the internet now. It's just a thing we do. So research is super easy. You can connect a couple dots and understand that, your music might be suited for, MMA competitions or something like that because you're like some brutal metal band or dubstep or whatever, or like maybe you've got singer songwriter vibes that people will also that like that stuff also like certain television shows or are attracted to certain brands. That can help narrow your focus in this big sea to kind of see where you're going to be casting your reel. Making yourself easy to find. That's again just the online branding stuff. Just make sure that you're, if you're creating URLs, that your URL directory, so domain.com/artist name is the same everywhere, the same as your Instagram handle. Consistency through everything. Also the people I think sleep on this sometimes, but if you're going to have any photos of yourself, get a bunch of them all done at once, so that they have kind of the same feel, because people will identify the feel of the photo sometimes on a web interface with you if you do it right. So just I'm a little bit of a nerd about this stuff, but cohesion is super important in your branding. Uh, some other stuff, we've done this several times. Well, actually, I'll back up. Of course, anything that you have, any work that you have done, be proud of it. Make sure that you're always letting people, know about placements that you've had. You're promoting it on Twitter. Kind of, we always use a little bit of humility and try to be as humble as possible about, how thankful we are that this company has joined up with us, or, always celebrating other people's successes. So if there's someone around your sphere that has done a sync or has done well, shout them out on Twitter, because the person that sees it actually works for you, because if you at the company, you at the band, and then you say this is a great sync, people are going to realize that someone's getting that and it's going to pop up in their Twitter and they're going to see it. So it's a great way, really easy way to engage without having to have made a placement yourself. Yeah. And then the other thing is, we love parties. So, and we love communication. So we often do little panels. If you live in a market that isn't really served by the industry as much, maybe do, some panels or do some forum work and talk about your experiences with others and try to bring people into your community. If you are, a label or a publisher or an artist that has a lot to talk about, definitely, sending out a monthly or bi-monthly kind of, hey, here's what I'm up to. Here's some things I'm into as well. Not make it all about yourself. Make the tone very, educational, with plugging a little bit of your stuff can be great. Um, yeah. And, the one thing I would say too is just be honest with the amount of content that you think you can put out when you're looking at kind of the promo. There's nothing worse than, someone that's like, I'm going to make a blog. They spend all this time on a WordPress theme. They get the thing looking great, and then they don't have time to write. So they just basically built a shell. That's worse than not having anything up. So if you are going to do a blog, you are going to start to talk about that stuff. Pay attention to the vision, to how it looks. How much? Be honest with how much you think you're actually going to be able to create content for it, and find a template or a look, a visualization for it that won't look empty if you don't have time. Nothing worse than that. Cool. So now the fun stuff, pitching. This is where it all happens. These are really important guidelines. I'm probably just going to read them down the list. Be personal and relevant. So, generic blasts, read like generic blasts. I think everybody that's on this call right now knows when they've been templated. Like if you look at the chat window, I actually got an email that was like, so they messed up their templating. If you look at the chat window, it just said, hi, first name. And then there was this very seemingly personal message that was attached to it. And, he blew it. He sent an apology. But, even without that, it's so apparent that someone's not being personal with you. So, without lurking on people, do your research, understand who the person is, and send. It's worth it to take 5 minutes out to send an email specifically to a person and thank them for their time. Keep it short and sweet. Obviously, no one has the time to read really long tracks. Never attach MP3s. Most spam filters for especially for large companies and like office lands will just kick those down, so they'll never see the email. Um, Another trick and a way to kind of it's not on the list here, but something that I recommend doing. There's software such as HubSpot, which is what we use, but there's a couple other softwares that will track opens of individual. They're mostly sales softwares, but they'll track opens of individual emails that you send. I'll put them in the chat window here. So HubSpot, Yesware is a good one. And what that'll do is it'll just kind of let you know when your email is opened, and then you will be able to see, when you'll have a gauge on when's the appropriate time to follow up. You'll know if they haven't seen it. If they didn't open it in a few weeks, send another one. Why not? Hey, I'm not sure if you caught my email. Hoping you can listen to this. Something really personal, friendly, easy. Highly recommend that. SyncTank and SoundGizmo go a little bit beyond that in that we track the opens, the listens, the downloads, literally everything that once someone clicks on a link through our system tracks literally everything they do. So if you send 10 tracks and they've only listened to 2, when you get on that next email, you're not, without, being too apparent that what they're doing, what to talk about. That you're going to talk about track 2 and 3, not 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, because they didn't listen to them. So we find that's a really great benefit for our users. There are other softwares as well that do that to a varying degree. But having that business intelligence can be super important in saving yourself some time. Okay, so label everything. Can't speak enough to how important metadata is. I'm going to send that once I figure out what's going on with this. I'm going to send that over to you guys before we end here, so that you can check out some of our metadata guidelines. Yeah, and then if you are sending emails out, if you are sending newsletters, this is definitely a good place for newsletters to do this, in which you can talk about any mentions you got on the internet, any syncs that you've had, how well your live tours are going, any radio plays, featured Pandora playlists, stuff like that. It's always good to kind of build a little bit of credibility to your catalog. And never send annoying follow-up emails. I disagree. I wouldn't send a follow-up email if you didn't have the software. But if someone didn't open your email, I don't think it's. I think this is Emma, and Emma, she's probably listening and cringing right now. But I think without blasting a million emails, if you do really have a good feeling and you do think that you're going to be helping someone, I don't see any problem with, especially if you have the business intelligence software set up, so that they didn't open the email. Why not? All right, so. Again, there's some on this next slide here. These are some really good resources when it comes to pitching. And I think just a bigger thing about pitching is you're helping people. You're not selling to people. I think this is something that a lot of salespeople don't understand across many verticals. You're not selling them to take their money and run. You're offering them a service because you can help them with their need. And treating it like that, I think, is super important. I think that comes off in the voice, it comes off in the messaging, and people would much, much rather have you be doing that. So your tone could also be kind of, put towards that end. Cool. So Doug DeLuca asks, in regard to following up, if the coordinator said that they were going to listen to the music, it should be okay to follow up. I think so. Yeah. I mean, we hear from a lot of, when we interview music supervisors, they come from this. I can only imagine what their inbox looks like, and they just get a lot of garbage. But if you're sticking to kind of the best practices of being personable, being personnel, and being being professional about it and not being too much of a pain. I think if the user, in my opinion, if they said they were going to listen to it, if they haven't followed you back, if they haven't said anything in a few weeks, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't, think it would be too bad to be persistent. Just, if I kind of get this stuff on the other end, kind of being in this business, we're always having people, tech vendors selling to us. And, I've seen some really good follow-ups. Hey, bud, hope you're doing well. Just wanted to make a personal follow-up. Just wanted to see if you haven't had a chance to listen to it. And then that's it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So Leslie asks, thanks, Mike. This is super helpful. I have to hop off. Okay, cool. Yeah, Leslie, just we'll shoot this out to the email that you signed up with, I think. Emma, that's right. We'll do that, right? If you're still here. She'll get back to me on my yeah, that is correct. Okay, thanks, Emma. Cool. So just moving down. So there are a couple different types of licensing you can, you can engage your catalog in. You usually pitch for a traditional sync license where it's kind of a one-to-one personal sell, and it's for usually higher end, higher ticket price syncs. Micro licensing is another way that you can kind of utilize your catalog, especially like I spoke about earlier, some of the stuff that maybe isn't top line. Maybe you've got some scratch demos from somewhere that has a nice orchestral swell and something, and you can see it being cinematic, but no one would ever listen to it on Pandora. Micro licensing is great. Is a great way to kind of put your stuff out in a passive way. In SyncTank, what we do is we basically set up a store for you, in which and Sound Gizmo as well, in which you can have your catalog be available on your custom, personalized website. And then if someone can listen, people can search, they can listen, and then they can apply for a license right there. We call it micro just usually because the sticker price is a little bit smaller. And having an automatic way to micro license is super important because, every time you type an email or pick up a phone or do any selling, you're burning margin because you're putting out work, that's labor that's going into that. So, if you're doing like a $500, $200, $300 license and you have to spend 10 emails on it, you just substantially hurt your margin. So finding ways to micro license, whether that be through, sync, through someone like MusicBed, or you get a SyncTank system or a Sound Gizmo system, and you can build your catalog, and we help you append your licenses and everything, and set different, uses for territories and different pricing schemas. That can be a great way to do it as well, especially if you don't have a rocking web presence yet. So the cool thing about micro licensing is, like, if you get a platform that's set it up, whether you do it yourself or you work with someone that's providing it for you, you will start to kind of have this, ideally, some sort of passive income coming in where people are licensing these things. You've approved the license, so you don't really have to do anything. And that money can start to roll in, and small fees do build up over time. Also Rumblefish and CD Baby, who are clients of ours, and TuneCore, they also provide some of these services, some through us, some through not us, but definitely interested to look at those companies. They're all really great. Oh, bye, Rose. Thanks. Rose is leaving. Doug, let's see. Yeah, I think you're right. Doug says, great. I feel like 2 weeks is probably a good timeline. I like to give space. Yeah, definitely. And just remember, helping, not selling. Super important. Speaking of helping, not selling, we're really big on relationship building. I think this is across every business. Really, it is about the relationships between the professionals. So attending networking events and conferences. We have tons of resources for that stuff on SyncBlog that you can check out. Being friendly. SyncTank sold most of its contracts by going to events, buying people beer, and then being like, "Hey, remember when you said you'd sign that contract? Here it is." We just went out there and we're the cool guys, and tried to be the coolest guys we could in the room and make as many friends as we could, and that led to a lot of business for us. So I can attest to the fact that being the coolest guy in the room, being the nice guy in the room, and asking all the questions. It's kind of like going on a Tinder date. You just want to be the best date possible, and really engage with the people that you're with and make it about them. So some stuff there. We talked about trust being a factor. I'm not going to read the slide. You guys can check it out. I spoke about third-party representation a little bit. If you don't have resources and time, depending on what the rest of your life entails, there are a lot. We don't specifically endorse any of them. They're actually slightly competition for us. But you might find yourself getting a sync plugger or being a part of a catalog might work for you, but you really need to be careful. You really need to read those contracts and know what you're getting into. Make things like exclusivity, the right to sync the songs outside of them are super important. If you're getting a contract that says like, I know some big players do this, like they're the only ones that can sync your contract, it might not be worth it. Because you might end up with your hands tied and the inability to make a big sync without these guys. And of course, you could go to them, but they're going to take 20% for your work or whatever percent. So definitely engage with people. It can be a great way to go if you do your research and you're able to get in touch with these people and you have a good feeling about it. Remember, they're a partner, so you're going to be working with them. It's not a one and done situation. You have to have people that are responsive to you. And there's a lot of research. A lot of people are writing about those things, so you can usually hone in on a good company. Just understand, what's advertorial and what isn't. So key events. This little link here literally says here is our consistently updated link or list of all the global music industry and publishing industry events. Find one close to you and go. They're great because there's a lot of talks, a lot of really smart people, smarter than me, that have a lot to say from a lot of different perspectives in the industry. There's also, again, usually fun happy hours and stuff where you can actually start to meet people and shake hands and give cards out, things like that. So we highly recommend it. And long but not least, this stuff is hard. I was going to use a different word for stuff. It's a battle, especially recently since the market's changed away from kind of the retail and more towards other opportunities for monetizing catalog. Everybody's on sync right now. Everybody, it's like the golden egg here nowadays. So we recommend that you take it with a little bit of an understanding that it can be pretty crazy. And, we're always here to help. If you guys need anything, feel free to reach out. Happy to offer any advice I can. But yeah, do what you do best. Be honest with yourself, be patient, and, kill it. Oh, and of course, so I think Emma put this in the meantime, go back and read our advice. So we just launched this blog, the new blog that Emma worked on, and she's really, really proud of it. So please check out syncblog.com. She did a really killer job on it. So that's about it. Again, we're SyncTank. Info at, Mike at as well if you have any questions. We're offering a promo for Sound Gizmo. If you guys wanted to check it out, we do like a 30-day free trial, and then this is kind of our old branding, so forgive me. You can use the promo code to get 25% off. Hit us up if you have any questions about any of that. We're happy to run it through. Cool. So I'm going to answer a few more questions. Let's see. Oh, cool. I'll check out that email. I'm sorry, I'm just reading. I don't know if you guys can actually see these questions as well. Cool. Oh, Aniola, we're gonna produce, and again, I hope I'm saying your name right. We're gonna send you a link. It's actually in this deck, and it'll have all of the events for the UK. Our main office is in London, so we're kind of Anglo-centric. So you'll probably find some good useful links there. Cool. And everybody else was just saying thanks. Jonathan says, how can I find out what a sync is worth? I think the first thing is to kind of get in and start to establish the relationships. Of course, don't necessarily cold pitch, but, use all the guidelines that we kind of laid out. And then, eventually when you start to build those relationships, you'll start to see briefs coming in, and those briefs will usually include some price, but everything's negotiable. I think that the more you do it, the more you'll kind of gain and understanding for what your catalog is worth in a way, and what your tracks are worth. And that's kind of an ongoing process as you learn more about its relevancy to a lot of the projects that you're around, and in comparison to other catalogs that are similar. And when I mean a similar catalog, I don't just mean the music is similar. I mean that you know the business is similar. You're dealing, if you're a medium sized label, you don't want to, if you're a medium sized like R&B label or pop label, you don't want to go look at what Republic's doing, because that they're not even playing on the same pitch. So you want to kind of find labels that are similar. And then as far as the market price, not really. If you're doing the micro licensing, going to sites like MusicBed where there are prices listed can be really helpful. But normally, it's in most, that my dad always told me that in negotiation, the person that speaks first loses. So it's always a bit of a cat and mouse to figure out, kind of what the price is. Normally, they'll give you a budget. And then it's, there'll be other people bidding most likely. So finding a comfortable place in that budget would be good. But it just all comes with time. And trying to kind of understand what the intrinsic value of your catalog is within your space. Judith, I think I might have missed the mailing list question. If you go to the blog, you can sign up for our mailing list, and we'll send all this stuff out to you. We don't spam. We do fortnight. We do like a roundup every fortnight, and then we send out some, if we have big sorry, I just lost my train there. If we have bigger posts, we'll put them on Twitter, and we might send out a quick note about it. We have a lot of guest writers who are really great that we like to talk a lot about. Bas Grassmeyer is great. He's doing a lot of work on kind of the heady future of the industry, and writing about it on the blog. So that's always good to read. Okay, so Carol, I'm just going to answer Carol's question. My group owns the masters to several recordings. We are interested in learning more about how to maximize and monetize the music. Any suggestions? There are several composers, and each composer owns their publishing. Carol, I think that the best way to do that is to figure out what would be a you want to maybe set up like an admin situation where you go to the composer and you say, hey, listen, you own the publishing, we own the master, 100% of nothing's nothing. In order to do the work and cover our overhead and margin this a little bit, we need X. And then figure out splits from there. Of course, the X I imagine would be on top, and then you'd have the your masters you would make money off of, and the publishing they would make money off of. But just see what your community feels like is the right vibe. And they could definitely if you own the masters and you have contact with people that own the publishing, it sounds like you've got some content on your hands that you should definitely be working on. Feel free to give me, if you want to talk in more depth, feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk to you about that. Charlotte asks, how many tracks should be in a catalog? As many as you have. We see catalogs that are 50 tracks, and we have catalogs, client catalogs that are 3 million tracks. 3 million tracks is a lot to manage. That's one of the things that SyncTank does for our clients, is it makes searching through immense catalogs easy based on, all of our search filters. But however many you can get that you think are viable. It's speaking to that. If you're a small catalog and you have friends that also have catalogs, maybe they play in your circle, or, you've done work with them in the studio and stuff like that. Maybe you think about joining forces, because that way, you have more creatives working the stuff and you have more stuff to work. Thanks, Athena. I appreciate that. She just had some kind words for me. Cool. So, hey, listen, I think my time is just about up. Thank you all for joining me so much today. I really appreciate you taking the time. We love talking about this stuff. I'm going to get this recording up, or actually, I'm not going to do it. Emma is going to get the recording up, and you guys can check it all out, and we'll get the decks going as well. I'm going to sign off now, and then see if I can't. Don't leave the meeting yet, because I'm going to actually try to throw the deck into the handouts for you, so you can get them right away without having to wait for an email. I'm just going to go on mute because I have to ask Emma how the best way to do this is. So anyway, thanks again. Thanks to Women in Music. Awesome organization. Please get involved with them. Their link is just here, womeninmusic.org/join. And please, feel free to reach out. Check out our blog, synctank.com, syncblog.com, soundgizmo.com, @synctank with an H at everything except for Instagram and Snapchat. Thanks again. Stay tuned. Let me see if I can get these handouts sent to you. I'll update in the chat with my success.